Gatilov renewed the Russian call for the start of political dialogue to solve the crisis in Syria. Syrian army units continue to chase terrorists, killing many of them and liberating hostages in Aleppo. And once again, terrorism targets Iraq, causing scores of dead and wounded victims in a series of explosions in several cities. Good afternoon. Russia renewed its support for Syria. The Deputy Foreign Minister of Russia, Mr. Gennady Gatilov, asserted Russia's call for the start of a political dialogue in Syria to solve the crisis. He wrote in his website that the UN Security Council and the UN Secretary General knows very well what should be done by members of the UN Security Council in discussion of the Syrian crisis. He asserted that the important thing now is not to search for collaborates, but to start political dialogue at once through the means of mediation available to the UN. Mr. Gatilov called upon all members of the Security Council to adopt the attitudes documented in the final communique of the Geneva meeting about Syria. Chairman of the Russian State Duma's International Affairs Committee, Alexei Pushkov, reiterated Russia's firm stance in the situation in Syria. During his meeting with the General Mufti of the Republic, Dr. Ahmed Badruddin Hassoun, and the Greek Orthodox Patriarchal Assistant Bishop Luke Al-Khoury at the Duma Council, Pushkov said that Russia adopts firm, objective stances on Syria, and there is consensus between the executive and legislative authorities, the majority of parties and political social movements, and the sweeping majority of the Russian public opinion in this regard. For his part, the Mufti Hassoun hailed Russia's stance in support of the principles of rights and justice in Syria. In turn, Bishop Luka referred to the crimes committed by terrorist groups against peaceful citizens, Muslims and Christians, who are destroying mosques, churches and wiping out entire families. Iranian Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Salehi discussed the current situation in Syria in a telephone call with the international envoy Al-Akhdar al-Ibrahimi. Salehi said that Iran was seeking to find a peaceful solution to the crisis according to a Syrian resolution, away from any foreign intervention. He asserted Iran's readiness to help the international envoy in order to enable him to bring about stability and security in Syria. Mr. al-Ibrahimi stressed the positive role of Iran in the Syrian situation. He considered the political option as the only option to solve the crisis in Syria. He also expressed hope that all parties would cooperate to create security and stability in the country and in the region. He stressed the necessity of continuing consultations and efforts to find a peaceful solution to the crisis. In our local news, Syrian Arab Army units continue to chase the remaining armed terrorists in several quarters in Aleppo in order to bring back safety and stability and security to the city and get rid of the crimes and attacks of the mercenary terrorists. A unit of our armed forces clashed with terrorists near the Maysalun area, killing and wounding many of them. Our armed forces also carried out a qualitative operation in which it killed a number of snipers near Al-Ansar Mosque in Maysalun. Another unit of our armed forces targeted escaping groups towards the quarters of Al-Safa and Al-Sha'ar, killing most of them. They also liberated 30 kidnapped people from the armed terrorists. A group of terrorists destroyed a civilian house with mortar shells in the area of As-Sulaymaniyah. 5 passengers were killed and 35 others were wounded when terrorists targeted a bus with an explosive device near the village of Al-Zaybaq along the road between Musyaf and Homs. The dead victims included a woman called Rasha Fahad Saeed and 3 others. The explosive device created a hole in the road nearly 5 meters deep. In a related context, the Syrian Arab Army continued to chase armed terrorist groups with the aim of restoring security to several areas and clearing them of mercenary terrorists. An army unit killed a large number of armed men and arrested many of their leaders in Deir al-Asafir neighborhood in Damascus countryside. The army also confiscated a car loaded with 68 automatic rifles, 2 machine guns and ammunition in Al-Dmir, while in Homs, At least 15 citizens were injured when 3 Israeli-made mortars were launched by an armed terrorist group at Al Midan neighborhood in the city. Meanwhile, the armed forces managed to liberate Khalid bin al-Walid school, which was taken by terrorists as a base for their criminal acts. The security forces chased the remaining mercenary terrorists in the western countryside of Dar'a, killing a large number of them. They also confiscated weapons, including RPGs and a large quantity of ammunition. Units of our army continued to chase the remaining terrorists in the Tadawan quarter and the Palestine Street in Damascus. The operation led to the death of several mercenary terrorists who erected roadblocks and terrorized citizens. A terrorist hideout center to make explosive devices was captured. A number of such devices planted in the streets to terrify our people were defused. During this operation, a number of kidnapped citizens were freed. "277 persons who were misled and involved in the recent events, whose hands are clean of Syrians' blood, were released after pledging not to carry arms again. A number of the released said that their release signals a new beginning for them to move on with their lives to build our society." Authorities at Beirut International Airport seized highly developed communication devices with 3 people who were aboard an Egyptian plane. Al-Manar TV channel said that the seized devices were similar to those seized a week ago aboard a Qatari plane, referring that the smugglers wanted to transport the devices from Lebanon to Syria. In Turkey, the Government of Justice and Development Party continued to subject the country to dangerous situations and to set up the Turkish army in battles against an illusory enemy in order to wriggle out of its failure to lead the country.
Erdogan's government has shown its failure to find solutions for the internal problems in Turkey, which is witnessing escalating waves of violence. Erdogan is setting up his army in battles against an illusory enemy in the east of the country. The Turkish army started a military operation that resulted in the death of 26 Kurds and 2 Turkish soldiers. The victims of this failing policies exceeded 8,000 dead people, including 200 Turkish soldiers and a large number of civilians. This policy angered the Turkish people, who denounced the failure of their government to find solutions for the political and social problems. These policies are creating tension in the border areas because the Turkish government is intervening in the affairs of the neighboring countries and turning Turkey into camps for extremist terrorists in order to serve the sinister schemes of the West.
The Iraqi authorities announced today the death of about 30 persons, including 3 Iraqi officers, and the injury of tens of civilians and military personnel in a series of separate terrorist attacks in Iraq, most of which carried out by booby-trapped cars. To the north of the Iraqi capital Baghdad, 11 military personnel were killed, including 2 officers, and 8 military personnel were injured in an attack at a checkpoint near Balad town. A colonel in the army clarified that unknown armed men attacked a checkpoint near Balad town, which is 70 kilometers north of Baghdad. Afterwards, a terrorist planted an explosive device that was detonated when the backup force reached the place, killing 11 army personnel, including a lieutenant colonel and a major. In Kirkuk city, 7 volunteers protected the oil facilities, were killed, and 17 others were injured in a terrorist explosion carried out with a booby-trapped car that targeted a gathering in front of the gate of the Northern Oil Company. And with this, we come to the end of our news for today. Stay tuned. After the break, Khalid Saqamani has the latest in economy. For more details, visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Ministry of Agriculture, in coordination with the Ministry of Industry, is supervising, facilitating receiving this season's cotton crops. The Minister of Agriculture pointed out that the group of engineers will be present in the official cotton receiving centers, and they will grant the farmers certificates of origin according to the official regulations, noting that this measure has been taken to make a way to get certificates to the ministry. The ministry also noted that that for the first time it is giving certificates to receive all other types of cotton, noting that the quality types will be received for 51 Syrian pounds. The Minister of Economy and Foreign Trade announced the formation of an advisory board to study the government's economic team. The board will include experts and all of those who wish to be active in the business society, noting that the proposals will be studied by the Commission and the decision support groups, explaining that the aim of all of this is making a decision based on knowledge to benefit the society. The minister also formed a committee to simplify the procedures, stressing that the bureaucracy must be eliminated, especially after automating the needed procedures to provide the best services as soon as possible and the least cost. The Minister of Industry affirmed the ministry's interest in both the public and the private industrial sectors when it comes to addressing the problems and the issues. The minister, during his tour of some companies, called for reconsidering all the decisions that have been taken in the past that have harmed the national industry, adding that there is a need to prepare a memorandum to support these industries and strengthen their competitiveness. The minister also noted that the effects of both the economic blockade and the sanctions that are being imposed on Syria. He referred to the need to secure the safety standards at all the plants and the factories. When it comes to olive production, Syria ranks the first among the Arab states and the fourth worldwide, as Latakia is considered one of the oldest cities in this domain. This season, the production of the olives was about 1 million tons, estimated by the Ministry of Agriculture. As the associate manager of the plant production at the ministry, Riyad Ibrahim, showed that the production is increasing annually, as there are 23 million seedlings that have not entered into the fruitation yet, as millions of trees are being planted annually. On the other hand, the oil sector is very important concerning providing job opportunities, directly or indirectly, in proceeding, processing, storing, and exporting the oil products. The Russian President Vladimir Putin stressed that the declaration of the APEC summit deferred the member countries' further task, as the first task is the principle of liberating the economic relations. He pointed out that the APEC leaders agreed on transparency in the field of trade relations. At the conclusion of the summit that was held in Russia, Putin said that Russia's policy would be partnership and integration with the member countries. He stressed that the cooperation among the countries of the East in the field of energy has a great potential. He also asserted that Russia would work jointly with the member countries to consolidate the economies of the countries of Asia and the Pacific in order to play a significant role in the global economy and to create additional factors of stable development. Thousands of demonstrators took to the streets in the second-largest Greek city in protest of the Greek government's latest round of austerity cuts in wages and in pensions. The trade unions and the leftists participated in the protests against the proposed cuts, worth at least 12 billion euros. More protests are expected in the coming few days when the Troika Committee will complete a report that declares whether Greece will receive the second batch of emergency financing from the Eurozone countries and the International Monetary Fund. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's over to the exchange rates according to the Central Bank of Syria. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our news bulletin for today. Thank you for joining us.